Wait, are we doing the intro song?
It's you're on. You are live.
Do, 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 do. Yeah, I just my own intro song.
Thanks.
Hello. And welcome to the Pixel Professor podcast, where we take an academic deep dive into the cultural and artistic phenomenon that is video games. It is May 20th, and I'm Swyphd, and I'm joined by MadMavn.
Hello.
And E-Rock Tenor.
Why did he get to go first? I'm the other host. Like, we're supposed to
I did it
introduce him
in
as the
reverse
guest later.
alphabetical order.
Oh,
I mean, I was a fan.
of course. I'll just sit here. I'm just going to sit and watch you guys do your thing then. This is
I
nice.
bet you wonder why I've asked you all to come here today.
We do.
I am curious a little bit.
The main reason is because this is a reverse intervention. You are both people who have had to deal with my microphone issues.
Oh my gosh.
So I wanted to give you an opportunity to just grow up and move past it. That's all I'm just trying to say.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, dear.
I could tell you needed that.
Yeah, this is going
So,
to become
onto
the
the
E-Rock
content.
Tenor MadMavn show. Yeah.
That was my other thing. We're introducing this guest who is way cooler than at least one of us, and so will most likely be taking over the hosting job, the co-hosting job.
Yeah.
And since we all know that E-Rock Tenor does more of the editing work, I just wanted to bid the audience adieu, and maybe I'll come back and see you guys later when they need a special guest to talk about whatever it is that I talk about.
Coolness is definitely measured by hair. And when you look at the three of us, in terms of I do not measure up. You both have glorious hair.
Swift's got crazy long hair.
You guys just look. Swyphd looks like Ewan McGregor.
Right?
Oh,
I can see it.
Just like Ewan McGregor.
Best compliment I've ever had.
Can you do an accent? Can you do the
hello there?
See,
General Kenobi.
Yeah.
Close enough.
It's great.
Yeah.
Will they flag that for a copyright thing?
Probably.
I don't know. But I have a patchy beard and no head on the top. No head on the top? That too. No hair on the top either.
Yep.
So I'm out. So anyway.
Hey, I just appreciate that you guys are taking it easy on me with the switching up the head and hair on the top, because I was also nervous about being on this, and so you guys messing up makes me feel good about messing up.
Don't worry. We only
I don't have
mess
a head
up.
on the top either.
No, none of us do, and this is just pure mess up, this whole podcast so far, right?
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
You've heard of the 10,000 hour rule? Our philosophy is 10,000 mistakes.
You know,
So we're just racking them up as fast as we can. See if we can get the 10,000 mistakes in less than 10,000 hours, and then...
it's a good
I
idea.
know that's a joke, but honestly, I feel like that is a real... that could be a book by itself and would sell probably really well.
I do feel like somehow
There'd be a
that's
lot of
going to come
typos
up in
in it.
the interview here. I do feel like, because that's a thing, right? In terms of streaming and mistakes and stuff like that, it's a big thing. We actually mentioned that probably on more than one of these podcasts, the book, The Slight Edge, which is a great book, by the way. And he talks about if you want to increase your success rate, you have to double your rate of failure. So we like quadruple it. We go all in on that.
Yeah.
We don't just double it.
We are having so much success.
Yes.
Mathematically. You can't deny it.
That's fantastic.
Amen. Amen to that.
You're welcome for having mic problems.
Yes.
Just throw that out there.
You're pushing that along.
Yeah, why do you gotta... We were about to get into like this happy-feely, like good situation.
You start there.
And then you start with the mic again.
Oh, and two of us. The two of us who have to deal with it,
The two of you who have had to deal with it.
including your really loud mouse clicking sounds right now, too. By the way,
I would also, if we are doing the reverse intervention, I do think your audience should know that in the time that I was editing our footage and your recordings, there was that one time where you not only had awful sound in the back and your mic wasn't the right microphone, you also recorded in segments of 15-minute segments of our 3-hour recording session.
oh,
Hey, it could have been 15 seconds. So,
my
again,
gosh.
you're welcome.
If it was 15 seconds, I would have been like, "Hey, I'm trashing the whole thing. We have to re-record it." I posted that video with the 15-minute segments.
You
And
did.
it was better for it.
See,
Probably
there's some genuine trauma here, and you're just turning it into a joke. I think
It's new trauma. That's the way to process trauma, is by
new trauma.
re-traumatizing.
Oh, I see. I see.
Speaking of trauma, your video game identity. Mavn,
Wait. I do want to say a quick thing. And this is about your audio. Your gain is really, like, you're really loud. You need to, like, turn the gain down a little bit there, Swyphd.
I've never wanted my gain up loud. You make me turn it up every time. I turn it down, and then you're like, turn it up.
Well, find the right level.
Oh,
Anyway,
man.
this is a great start.
Honestly, it is better.
It's better. That's
It is
easier to
better.
edit.
So good.
Don't you do it. Don't you do it. Oh, man. This already feels right. Okay,
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah.
Is that better?
Oh, my gosh.
Mhm.
Yep, it sure is.
So, Mavin,
Yep.
you
Yes.
are a successful, popular YouTube's content creator.
Yeah.
Okay, just
You said that really
Gain-wise?
well. Yep. good
gain-wise?
job. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Everybody,
Yeah, you're
I'm
doing
going to do
great.
that after every clause. Not after every sentence, after every clause.
It's a little loud, but you're good. Well, we can deal with it. Don't mess with it.
We can
Okay,
fix it in post.
Yeah, we'll fix it in post. Yes.
That's my
That's your nickname?
that's my epitaph.
Voted most likely in high school to need to be fixed in post.
Here lies Swyphd.
Yes.
We'll fix him in post. Now we finally get to fix him.
We got metaphysical here. This is awesome. Yeah, this is
love
good.
it.
What are we
Well,
doing?
that's our time. Thanks for joining us, Mavin. Appreciate your merciless mocking. And
Yes, you're welcome.
I will say, I've been listening to all your guys' episodes. I feel like sometimes when you guys say stuff, I'm like, people are gonna think I'm terrible.
that's our goal.
But if they watch any of this Guy Jack series, they do know that I am a little bit sometimes. I'll rewatch those, and I'm like, Swyphd and I think we got a little bit away from ourselves when we were making fun of E-Rock.
Who's the brunt of it usually? That's the
No,
thing.
yeah,
like,
it's
it's usually
E-Rock
me.
for
So
sure.
this is nice. This is refreshing to have Swyphd be the brunt of something for once.
Yeah.
Goodness.
For once.
For once. So,
I just
okay.
appreciate that you guys don't make fun of me because I can't handle it. I can dish it out, but I am
Can't
too
take
sensitive to handle it.
Can't take it.
We don't make fun of you in front of you.
Yeah,
well,
that's true.
If
That'll-
we recorded, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'll turn up the confidence right there. Absolutely.
There you go.
We only mock you behind your back.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it's
Well, I
fine.
mean, you know what? The fact that I can't hear it makes it better.
Everyone does. Everyone
Yes.
says.
Everyone says.
Everyone says.
So games are kind of, speaking of stuff that everyone says, games are a big part of your life, Mavin.
True.
How like, what do games mean to you? How did you get started with video games? Just like a little bit of, in less than 3 hours, answer that question. That's a big question, I know.
Yeah, and I am one who talks a lot, so I'll try to be a little bit more brief. Okay, one more time the question.
Yeah.
Video games. That's the question.
I think the question
What do
was,
they
yeah.
mean to you?
Okay.
How did you get started with video games?
Yeah, I think I really got hooked on video games when I was playing them with my dad. I remember, I think the earliest video game memories that I had was with my cousin over at his house. We were playing Gauntlet Dark Legacy. And that was on the N64, and that was one of the first times I really, really got into a game. And then I remember with my dad, I would play, or I would actually, I couldn't figure out the game because it was too complicated, but I would watch him play Final Fantasy. And then later, as I got a little bit older, we would get into like Call of Duty and Halo, and it became this way that I connected with other people. For me, video games was how I made a lot of my friends. Like we would do LAN parties, we'd play Halo together, we'd play Skyrim together when it first came out. I have a picture somewhere in ancient history, but it was when Skyrim came out, we had all of my friends over and everybody brought their TV and their console, and we all set up in like the garage. And we have the map that came with the collector's edition of the game, and we're all sitting there like looking at the map and pointing out different areas.
What?
Like we need to go to the College of Winterhold, and yeah, I mean we gamed for, I think that It was like a 3-day weekend or something, and we gamed that whole weekend, just all hanging out playing. And
I gotta write that.
That is awesome.
I have tons of follow-up questions. That's so cool. Like anyway. Yes, keep going. But yeah.
So gaming for me was always a way to connect with other people, and it was a way in which I could, I don't know, just have fun and I don't want to get. I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. It was a common ground for people of a lot of different beliefs to be able to come together and hang out and have this one thing that we were all interested in, which I think is the same with sports or with really any hobby that involves multiple people. Is that thing is something that's like a common ground. And so for me, it was video games that became that.
What would you say? I actually really relate to that. Like, I always felt like I was kind of the friend who had the interests that linked up a lot of like a wide variety of different friends. And I always felt like if they ever got together on their own, they'd fight probably, but like somehow we had found this thing that was a connection for all of us. What would you say was the makeup of your friend group? Like, what video games were your common interests? What were their varying interests? Like, what else did they do?
Well, I mean, I had a couple friends that were very sporty, and so they would be. I mean, I was pretty sporty too back in high school when kind of all of this stuff happened. But we had people that were sporty. We had people that were into like anime and into music and I guess, like, are we talking like 90s movie like cliques that these people were in, like the nerds and the jocks and the band kids?
Were they that? Were they like different cliques, but you come together around video games?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think the cliques dissolve quite a bit when you're in I think that group.
Yeah.
I mean, we had people that were like, okay, I gotta go to lacrosse or swim practice or something, and then we had other people that were like, I gotta study for the AP exam and do chess club, you know?
Yeah. No, I feel like video games back maybe in the 90s, like the kids who played video games were their own clique. And then I think somehow that does happen, like extreme gamers and stuff like that. But I think somehow gaming has become a thing that isn't necessarily a clique. It's something that it's so universal, everyone does it. So it's a unifier instead of a divider. Maybe that's interesting. That's really cool.
Well, it depends on which game you play. If you want to talk about League of Legends, can sometimes be a little bit divisive.
Yeah, that community is legendary, right? Well, and I'm also curious. So, how often do you play games, or did you play games? Let's just keep it in the past, I guess, for now. That were just you. Like Skyrim, I played it to get away from everybody. You even found a way to make Skyrim a social game. Like that, the idea that you're all playing a completely on its own game together. That just blows my mind.
That's cool.
How often did you and do you play games that aren't in a community setting?
So the question was, how often do you play games that are not in a community setting?
So I guess it can go either way. Like, what percentage of time do you spend gaming with someone else? Like, of your gaming time, how often is someone else involved?
Well, nowadays, because I record, I don't spend as much time playing multiplayer. I think I would like to change that, but because I do think gaming is better when you have other people.
Yeah.
It's not easier for YouTube content because YouTube content, it's like you need to show as much progress as possible in a short period of time, and it's hard to do.
Swyphd makes that really hard.
Swyphd is the antithesis of progress.
I flip over rovers every time I
sure
play.
Do. It's really just you who does that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did that
even
one
when you
time.
do it.
I did it like
my
one
fault.
time,
But
and
it was legendary when you did it. It was legendary.
It became the thing that I do.
It wasn't
and it was
just
like
one time.
It was like one time. It was like one
The
time.
like is doing a lot of work.
I'm sure it was just like one time.
It was like one time. If by like you mean times 3.
I don't have the best memory. I do have 2 distinct memories of just absolutely terrible crashes from you.
It was when we played
engineers.
and then when you edited. It's the same instance twice.
Yep.
No, definitely not. Two different cars for sure.
Anyway, but yeah, so okay, so yeah, now you have to not play with people because
yeah,
you
not
edit
as
so
much.
often.
But I mean, we play games. We play games twice a week.
Yeah,
and I look forward to that all the time.
Oh, me too. So, but you're
I could take it or leave it, but yeah.
Oh, so could we? No, when you I.
The Pixel Professor podcast is down to one professor now.
We keep losing people. Your game is still really loud, by the way. It's just I don't know what your deal is, dude. Like I feel like
my max
is there
it's upside down, so I can't tell if I'm turning it up or down.
Seems like it might have been up.
I think you might have turned it up. Yeah, I think. Let's see. Let's just test out this whole thing.
Well,
you should anyway. So, but I was gonna say, but getting into games. What percentage of the games that got you interested in games? What percentage of that time was with other people?
Well, when I first, that's a difficult. I don't know if I have a percentage for you.
I need an exact percentage.
Yeah. So I think it's 63.2.
Okay, 63.2.
No,
Okay,
when I was playing games back in like middle school, high school. Even early college, I was mostly a console gamer, and I had a core group of friends that I played games with pretty frequently. And by that I mean I was a single dude, and so every night I would be getting on with the boys, and we would be playing some kind of game.
Yeah.
But consoles, I think, lend themselves more to multiplayer games. There are definitely really well-known single-player games for console. Like I think God of War and God of War Ragnarok, and just in recent memory, or like Red Dead, Skyrim. But
wait, Red Dead isn't multiplayer?
Red Dead 2, they have a multiplayer option,
but the original one.
Much
but
maligned.
the campaign is single player.
Okay.
Hey, you did it. You're almost a little too soft. You turned it down. Well done there, Swyphd. You can turn it up just a little bit more now, and we got it.
Touching that.
You did. You're doing a good job. And when I say a good job, I mean it's like not like horrible, but it's.
I think this is destiny fulfilling itself.
It really is. You're on with us, and basically it's me actually making him fix it while we do it in real time, because I don't know. I just feel like the audience wants to experience this a little bit to know.
No content is better than Swyphd Fix Your Mic content.
Yes, it's my favorite.
It's the best.
The algorithm.
Yes,
loves
the algorithm loves that. Okay, that's really cool. So how much time did you spend playing some of the, like PlayStation, right? Notorious for those single player story filled games like God of War and Last of Us and all those kinds of things. How much did you play those? And if you played those, did you play those by yourself? I guess they're all by yourself. Are those all by yourself? I guess they are, right? Like Red Dead is, and there's no like, what do you call that? Co-op mode or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I played single player games, but I think that I did, generally speaking, lean more towards multiplayer.
That's so cool.
I would, my buddies would, which is funny because I do this to you guys, but my buddies would hit me up and say, "Hey, there's this new game coming out. We should all get it and try it out and do this." And so I would get these recommendations, and then I'd be like, "Okay, sure," and we would pick it up and we would play it for a while. And I remember my freshman year of college, I got No Man's Sky.
Oh,
and I got really into that game for a while, even when everyone else hated it. I played it like day one and played it almost entirely through.
No.
Well, and by that I mean getting to the center of the galaxy, because it didn't really. I beat the Atlas quest line, and then I also was working to get to the center of the galaxy.
Wow.
And so I'd actually love to take a look at that one again, because they recently came out with a couple big updates that were pretty cool.
Like added? My word.
Ship customization. They just added ship customization. It's been like 10 years.
Everyone's been waiting for that one.
I know.
I've been waiting for that one.
I've been waiting so long for that one.
That's a problem. Because that game, every time I get back into it's a problem, and then... Oh, man, I love that game.
It's so good.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I think generally speaking, I did for a long time lean more towards multiplayer games. And then... And then, I mean, even now, the games that I play on the channel are the two that I primarily have done, Space Engineers and Project Zomboid. Both of those are also multiplayer games.
It's true. Even the ones you play by yourself are either for a community, like for YouTube, or ones that would involve community to play with, like Space Engineers and Project Zomboid and all of those. They're all multiplayer games. That's really cool.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, Space Engineers, what drew you to that game?
Because
that was the first game you made a video on, right, for your channel. Some of those took off quite a bit.
Yeah,
they did.
Yeah.
So what is it about Space Engineers?
I got super lucky with that. I think what happened was I think the algorithm mixed me up with those wilderness survival building videos, where people are like, I went out in the woods and I built this cave or this log cabin or something. I think my content got like looped in with that thing, and that's how that kind of took off pretty quickly.
No one knows the ways of the algorithm.
Yeah, I don't know how those streams got crossed, but I guess I had survival in the name of it, and so that was just kind of like a buzzword. But I got into Space Engineers because it was Minecraft, but for adults, I guess.
Yes.
It was, I mean, that was the way that I looked at it when I first got into it. It is quite a bit more than that. But when I first got into the game, I was like, oh, I really like the idea of being able to I don't want to just say like engineer in space, because that's the name of the game, Space Engineers. But I really liked the idea of being able to build your ship and do all that fine tuning that you can do in Space Engineers with all of the like making sure you balance out the batteries with the thrust that you have, and understanding like the weight that you like, your dry weight versus your fully loaded weight. And
totally.
I don't know. I'm a nerd, and I got really into the idea of the math behind it, and then all the cool builds that you can do. So you had creative freedom to build whatever you wanted to do, but then there was also a framework for it was creativity, but it had purpose, I guess, right? Because if you have creativity that has no restraint, then it can be chaos, right? Or it doesn't feel like it serves a function. But if there are certain criteria or certain, I guess, limitations put on it, right? Like you can't put a thruster and have a block underneath it because it would get destroyed by the thrust. And so you need to be creative with the placement of your thrusters. You can't have your ship have too many cargo containers, because if you overload your cargo, then you don't have enough thrust to lift off. And so balancing all of those things while also trying to be creative, that idea to me was something that was really attractive.
Well, and we've talked about this before, you and I, like, I think you also sort of, you undersell the engineering aspect of your brain. Like I watch you create stuff, and to you it's just like, well, duh, this goes here, and this it just feels like this common sense thing that you're doing when you build it. And I just sit there and watch and go, I would never have thought to do any of those things. And I'm not smart in many of the ways that you are smart, but just the way you push things together and put things together just often baffles my mind. So
well, I very much appreciate that. I don't know if it's smarts or just sheer hours in the game.
Probably both. I feel like you come at any new game that way, though. Anytime we even start a new game with you, you just instantly get into the crafting thing, and there's something about the aspects of the behind the scenes rules of how that's created. You can just, I think it's one of the things that I enjoy about watching your content, is besides the fact that it's entertaining. And there was something I wanted to like circle back on that you said. It's entertaining, but it's also, your builds are just not just engineered so well, they're aesthetically pleasing too. It's just a really fun world to be in. I'll never forget the first time it was No Suit Survival, your first series there. So I've been watching your No Suit Survival for so long, and everyone, even if you're not a Space Engineers fan, we should really go watch that. But it was really fun to, like, there's this one particular base you'd been working on for a while, and we got to hop on, and it felt like, I don't know, like going to Disneyland or something. It was like I'd seen it on TV. I was like, it felt like, I don't know, like seeing a celebrity or something. It was like this. I was like, I'm actually here. I remember when he built that launch pad over there and set up those lights, like those neon lights, in this cool way that I never would have thought of. I'm standing in front of that. It was so cool. Like, it was so cool to be there and to be anyway. So you build a world that is fun to inhabit as an audience member, and I don't know. I don't know if there's a question in there even to say, like, how do you do that? I guess is one question. Or is there something about how you see it? And maybe you don't even know how that works or why that works. But the other thing I actually wanted to say, if I can remember what the other question was that I had. Oh, rules. The thing you said about setting rules for so I was going to ask you, you pull rules, it seems to me, like from two places. You've got the rules from the game itself, like you said, like thrust and weight and that kind of stuff. And then you love to make your life particularly difficult by setting your... Paul Hindemith is one of my favorite composition teachers, and he used to tell his students when they were stuck with writer's block or songwriter's block or composition block, just keep adding rules until creativity becomes the only option. Like, and I found that with my own students, like, if you keep adding rules, eventually, for whatever reason, it sparks this, ooh, this is a challenge that I want to really dig into. So how do you come up with your rules? And is it really just to torture yourself, or is there, I don't know, what's the MadMavn algorithm for rule creation, if there's one?
I guess, I mean, there probably is a level of it that is masochism. So I mean, there's part of it that's like, for YouTube, you want to do something that's new and different, and people, if you pitch something that people see as difficult, then they will be intrigued. But I think for me, it was more than that. I wanted to do something that was a little bit more challenging. So specifically with no suit survival, you're in space, but you don't have a spacesuit. And so, and then I also made it difficult with the gravity on that first planet. I don't even know how I did it, by the way. Like I went galaxy brain for a day, and I just went into the mod that was that planet Helgen, and I found where the gravity was, and I changed it. Wow. And then if you asked me to do that today, I could not do it. I don't even know if the next day I could have done it. But I don't know how that happened. But it worked out that one day. But anyway, so I set the gravity really high as well. And the reason I wanted to do that with Space Engineers was I had already played a ton of it. And that game specifically, kind of like Minecraft. I mean, Minecraft does have the Ender Dragon, so now there is kind of like a objective. But Space Engineers is a sandbox, and so you kind of have to make your own objectives. And I wanted to see what could be done in a what's a good way to say this? I wanted to see how the builds and the buildings and the ships and the rovers, how everything would look given different constraints.
Oh, it's like, how do you design into that? Like, how do you design into those challenges?
Yeah, so changing the constraints changes the output of the design. So the turtle was in that series, that was like my go-to ship that I like made a bunch of variations of.
I love the turtle.
And I don't know if I talked about this in the actual thing, but the reason I called it the turtle was because it had so much downward thrust because of the 3 times gravity that if it ever flipped over, it was never getting back because it couldn't, like, there was nothing I could do. And so that's why it was called the turtle. But yeah, that's a ship that was designed for that really high gravity and to be able to have cargo and to be able to transport, stuff around my base. And because I didn't have a suit, I needed to stay in the cockpit of a ship. And so I needed these things to be able to get me around and transport me around. And I needed them to be able to weld up my base. And so they had to be versatile. And wow. I just thought the idea of how would instead of having a spacesuit, you have to build a place that is connected by pressurized rooms which actually was the case of how I ended up playing that. But that was the thought, at least. And then the high gravity is like, how does that affect the ships that you make? And
so it's like it's a form follows function kind of a thing, like, and to see how that would happen. And did it feel risky? Like, I mean, you create that rule, you start a series, you have no idea how it's going to end up. It doesn't feel like if you get the rules wrong, the series is going to, like, did you think about that?
I don't think I thought about that at the beginning, for sure. I think too much about that now. But I think at the beginning, I definitely didn't think about it in that term. I wanted to try it out, and I was in between jobs, and I just was watching somebody else do space engineers videos, and I don't know, I had some editing experience, and so I decided, hey, why not?
That's so cool.
Best case scenario, something happens and I get paid and I can, pursue this. Worst case scenario, I end up playing the game that I was planning on playing today anyway.
Yeah. So that's so cool. That's so cool. Well, and just the way your brain creates those rules and stuff. Like even the series that I did, it was because we had one of these days you spouted off several different like scenario ideas. And first of all, I couldn't even think of one, and you had like 5 that all sounded intriguing. And then one of them was like, "Oh, the no scrap thing was what I did." Like the idea that you couldn't, or also whatever. What did I didn't remember what I called my series.
It was the grind.
The grind. Well, it's called the grind, but the idea was I couldn't mine for resources. I could only use scrap. Which also was a really fun challenge to have to design around. Anyway, the creative aspect coupled with the designing and engineer aspect of the way you come at things is just really interesting.
I appreciate it.
Thanks. That's cool.
We've talked before on this podcast about the idea of flow and the idea of kind of getting into a game. And one of the key things is balancing skill and ability. And it seems like that's you're really good at tweaking the not skill and ability. That's the same word.
Challenge and ability.
But balancing challenge and ability.
Yeah.
So you tweak the challenge, and then the ability kind of you change, you grow, like you learn, you figure things out as you go. And I think that's Space Engineers is a particularly fail heavy game, I think. I think just kind of in general, also specifically for me, but like in general, the idea is you try and fail. You try things, you're like, oh, that didn't work. What did I do wrong? And then you do the math, or you tweak something, and
sometimes the things that go wrong are not even. I mean, well, in Iraq's case, it's never been his fault.
No, it really isn't. I think we should celebrate this failure you speak of. I think it's something that we should be excited about.
Well, I was just going to say, with Space Engineers, you have clang that can sometimes kick in because it's a physics-based engine, and so sometimes things just go wildly wrong for no reason.
Which is all that ever happened to me. It was just it was physics engines.
The invisible physics forces that didn't make sense.
It had nothing to do with my skill at
and turning the gyroscopes to override.
Nothing to ever do with that.
You knew exactly what that issue was. The gyro.
I'm a victim. I'm
curious to know. So the second game you did, the second game you kind of transitioned to was Project Zomboid, which has far less space and it also has far less engineering. So what drew you to Zomboid, and was it what did you go to it because it was in some way similar to Space Engineers, or did you just want to go totally different?
Actually, I did go to it because it was somewhat similar to Space Engineers. So I knew that I had a bigger audience, and so that was one thing that was kind of attractive. But it was also it's also a very, very in-depth, mechanically heavy game. And it's also a sandbox game. And so the cool thing about sandbox games, which is, I guess, kind of where my, at least YouTube niche lies, is that you can tweak the variables of the game. And there's, in both cases with those games, there's also a ton of mods that you can add that will change the gameplay style. And I'm a big fan of mods because I'm a big fan of mods because you can tweak things and make the game play the way that you want to. And I know that sometimes people are very much in the realm of, no, you don't mess with the way that the developers wanted this game to be played. And I can totally respect that. And usually when I first play a game, I'll get to know it a little bit first. But then I'll start going and looking for mods when I start feeling like, okay, I really like this game, but I think that one thing that would make it a little bit better is I find this certain task a little tedious. And so, I'm going to try to find a mod that will automate it, or that will take a little bit of the pressure off that side, because you only have so much time in a day, and you want to spend it doing the things that you actually enjoy. And so if you can automate a small part like inventory management in a lot of these sandbox games, right?
Inventory.
Then you don't have to go running around your base looking for a certain thing, and instead you can spend time fighting zombies and doing stuff. So there are a lot of similarities between those two games in that regard, that it can be customized. And the 100 Days Survival Challenge story things, even though the format was very different for the videos, it was similar because it was taking the standard game and then adding additional constraints. Namely, for the 100 days, it was, all right, adding the 10 years later mod makes it so that you can't drive around on the roads. You have blocked sight lines. You don't start with power or water.
Man.
And so adds
this game
a
is
little
hard
bit of
enough
additional challenge.
already.
Yeah.
You love to raise stakes.
I do like to raise stakes.
Yes.
And I realized that I went too far when we wanted to do the Last of Us
that's
series
right.
when I made the zombie sprinters. That, you know what? That one was a mistake. I raised it too high.
There was lots of failure.
Yeah.
Those first couple goes we had with that. Oh, that was torture. Yeah.
That was
balance of challenge and ability might have been a little bit on the challenge side.
The challenge was wild. I think that just convinced me that I would not survive The Last of Us.
We did find each other eventually. And the deaths were quite hilarious, I will say. Like, they were some of our funniest deaths.
Well, when you had one episode, the first one, you just fully ran off a roof. And
you couldn't tell where it was, like the 3D thing. Like, it was in the way the light worked off of it. I think I actually did that several times. It was usually after I had finally achieved some level of safety from the zombies. It's like, what could go wrong now? And then plummeting off a roof was what could go wrong. Yeah,
I mean, that'll definitely do it. Sure.
It'll wreck your whole day.
Get you every
basically.
time.
Yes, it sure will. That's really interesting.
So a lot of people have experienced the YouTube or the viewer side of YouTube gamers, of people who, I want to say streamers, but you generally don't stream on YouTube. You generally record. So YouTube content creators, let's say. What is as a successful YouTube content creator, what do you do? Because I know that there's a lot of work, a ton of work that goes into the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, microphones, don't even get me started.
We already have. We got you started on those for sure. Yes.
So
I don't see what the big deal is. I just use like a tin can with a piece of string.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah.
Well, just the average day, you wake up at noon, maybe 1. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Go look roll over your bag of Cheetos.
Yep, exactly. No, it's a lot of, and I don't think that I am necessarily doing it correctly, or maybe correct is the wrong word. I think that there are a lot of different ways to approach it. I think the biggest change was obviously between Space Engineers and the Project Zomboid. And those were two different approaches. So the Space Engineers approach was, I was in a small niche and I would record myself. I would just get on, I would play the game, and I would talk while I was playing. And because it's an engineering game, I would kind of be thinking through how to solve problems that would present themselves. And as I would be talking and thinking through, I'd just be kind of talking out loud. And then I would go in and I would take, 8, 10, 12 hours of footage. And I also had a secondary recording device, and so I got into like having those time lapse builds. So if there was
cool.
ever something that was going on that was kind of boring, or I was building something and I already had explained what I was going to do, I didn't really need to, have me talking through it the entire time, and just rather like show a time lapse. And I would post every week, and that consistency I think was pretty good, and is something that I'm trying to get back into. So that was the approach at the beginning. It was at the beginning of the week, I would film like Monday, Tuesday, then I would start editing Wednesday, Thursday, and then I would try to edit and upload by Friday. And then sometimes if it got, if I had too much footage or I didn't have the time during the week, then I would end up posting it on Saturday. Then when I did Zomboid, I took a break, and I wanted to reevaluate because I had noticed that my videos were getting less and less views as I continued to post. And I think that now looking back, it probably had a lot to do with the thumbnail and title. I didn't really do a lot of research when I first started. I was just like, let me put this out. And thumbnail and title and searchability are a huge thing, go figure. And so now there's a part of me that wonders if I went back and I changed those, would that change the viewership on those? But doing it episode by episode, I realized that people seem to fall off over time. Like, people really like the concept of a pilot, but not everyone is in it for the long haul to get to episode 70, right?
So true.
And so I wanted to take a different approach, and I wanted to look at different games and different ways in which I could produce these videos. I went in and I spent a ton of time doing research on other channels, and the big thing that I wanted to focus on when I was looking was not what the big channels were doing, because if Markiplier or Mr. Beast post a video, it is always going to get a large amount of views, right? And I have no gauge of what their success level is, because
it's crazy.
Every video that they post gets more views than any video that I've ever posted.
Well,
right?
and to the point where if you post at the same time as them, the algorithm's going to favor them so much that it's a luck of the draw thing, right? It'll draw viewership away from other potential, and it's crazy. Yeah.
And so if you go to a big channel that's already been established, already been around for 10 years, then they are playing at different rules. And YouTube is also changing constantly. And so the stuff that worked for them to get big is not going to work for you. So you also can't go back 10 years and take that content at face value. So what I did was I started looking around YouTube, seeing who has been posting videos and hitting wild success where their view count does not match their subscriber count. And they were having really, really rapid success in the last 6 months. And what I noticed is that pretty much every one of the videos that fit that criteria within the gaming industry were these 100-day challenges where people would have just massive amounts of progress, where you start from zero and you get all the way up to some crazy level of proficiency. And especially in these sandbox style games, just tackling that challenge of starting the game from nothing and then getting to the end game. People tend to really like that idea, and for some reason the 100 days formatting is just easily digestible and easily searchable. And so I switched to that idea. And then as far as how I go about content creation with that, it went from 10 to 12 hours of footage. Probably 8 to 10 hours of footage. If it was ever 12 or more than that, that's usually when I had to post on Saturdays. So 8 to 10 hours of recording, and then however long it took me to edit and score it. Now it was every day in Project Zomboid is an hour. And now your character does sleep, and so that does take some of the time away. But in order to make sure that your editing and everything is organized, after every single day, I would stop the recording and I'd check my settings and make sure that like it recorded right and did everything right, and then I would press record and do it all over again. So there was it wasn't a full hour, but essentially with all of the back end work of trying to make sure that all my files were labeled correctly, and I had to have backups because the game crashed pretty frequently because the amount of mods that I was using. And so like making backups to make sure that like, you know, files didn't get corrupted and like all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it did equate to about 100+ hours of recording by itself, and then trying to go into an editing software. And also, this wasn't just off the top of my head. I went in this time and I scripted out the entire like 100 hours of footage to make it into a story afterwards. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And then I edited all that, scored it, put it together, and put it on YouTube. Unfortunately, it was pretty successful.
Yeah.
I'd say
so.
It was pretty wild.
Are we allowed to ask how many views? How do you know where it's at right now?
I mean, I could pretty quickly
We
pull
can
it
look
up.
that up, right?
We're going to link to this in the show notes.
For sure.
And in the
and you
description of the
definitely,
video.
it's so cool. Like do you have any I have so many questions about that whole process. I think if there's anything people need to listen to, it's like the what you just broke down. And as you said, like you could as a creator, you could follow that exact same formula and have it not work. That being said, there's something about the way you broke down how you were analyzing other videos that I think is extremely valuable to other content creators out there. But what do you think people are watching? What are they watching you for? Like what is it about? And I know you've been asking yourself the same question.
Yeah, I ask myself that all the time.
But like even just like, how do you gauge that? Like, do you watch the comments? Is that, that's probably a different question that's maybe even loaded, but like how do you know what people are there for? How have you been able to gauge that?
You know what? I don't think I know a specific answer because I think it's different for everybody.
Interesting.
And the reason I think that is because of comments recently. Some people watch it because they hate it, you know, if that happens. But a lot of people watch it and, you know, it's either entertaining, they get into the story. Some people get into it and they just like the mods that I'm using. And so they ask about like the mod pack and how do I get a game to feel like this? You know, they want that kind of style because when you build a scenario, you know, other people are like, I would like to try that. I've been playing the vanilla game for a long time, and I've exhausted the I don't want to say like exhausted the challenge entirely, but like I'm trying to think of that. Would you say challenge and ability?
Yeah.
It's like I'm used to the challenge, and so my ability has now rised to match
so
it.
I'm not in flow
and
anymore.
So
I got to change this up.
Yeah. And so by offering a new scenario, a different way to play the game, I've had several comments of people saying this renewed my interest in the game because I hadn't thought about playing this game in this way.
It's so interesting. Well, and it makes me think about what you were talking about with No Suit Survival and you're to episode 70 or whatever else when you're playing that game. Like, we do know that human brains love novelty. And as you said, they're after a new challenge or something like that. What you've done with your scenario and changing it up, whether it's the mods or the scenario itself, by putting a new twist on a game that people are really super interested in, you're offering a sense of novelty to people. It's hard to gauge what aspect of that novelty is going to draw someone in or out. I'm actually really so you said people watch it who hate it, like they go on, they like
yeah, I mean, but I think that's with anything. I don't think
but like they enough to say like do they say they watch the whole thing? Like I watched this whole thing and I hate it, but I still watched the whole thing. Like that's just fascinating.
I don't know if I've ever gotten like that specific comment, but I've definitely gotten stuff where it's like people who like playing the game vanilla, they'll come on and be like, you can almost see the actual game through all the mods, and it's like, oh yeah, I mean, it's still the backbone, but I do have a frankly absurd amount of mods on this game, so it's like it's got duct tape around the whole thing.
Having downloaded those mods to play those scenarios with you, it's always that's really there was another question I had in there too. I'm fascinated by the addition of new novelty. I will say, I'm curious about your answer to this question, or if you recognize this as well. Do you think do people watch you because you're good at games? Is that a stupid question? Again, maybe you don't even recognize this. You are very good at games. Do you see that? Does anyone comment on that? And do you think that's why people watch you?
I don't. Here's the thing. I don't. I think that I am good at like survival crafting games,
yes,
because I understand the mechanics of those games because I spend so much time in them.
Yeah, speaking as someone who doesn't survive and can't craft, yes, I would confirm.
But I don't consider myself a good gamer. I don't consider myself, like, if we were to play PvP games, I would get my butt just handed to me. Now, I used to be pretty good at them because that was all I ever played. So I was like somewhat decent at Halo multiplayer, but now if I play with some of my my brother's younger friends, they just wipe the floor with me, and I'm like, where did all of that talent go?
It's got to be the youths in there, and their quick clicking, and what are the?
I will bring up just my obligatory Polytopia reference here.
Come on, don't. Why did you go?
That has nothing to do with the youths and the clicking.
Right?
I'm just going to throw that out there.
That's
something that I think.
That's over.
Here's the thing. You know what? You won fair and square.
No,
at that game.
Don't tell him that.
But no, he did. But I will say, I was not expecting the underhandedness, and maybe I should have.
You should
underhandedness.
I need to expect the unexpected. But I thought we all went into there, and it seemed like we were all playing a really friendly game. Nobody was attacking each other. Everybody was like dealing with the NPCs in the game, and it was all like, it was all chill. Like it was a tutorial round.
Nope.
And then as soon as it looked like I was gonna win, you were like, I cannot stand for this. And so you, in the shadows, built an entire army. And then right before I won, you were like, hey, you know all those points you have? It'd be a real shame if something happened to them. And then you came out of the abyss with this army and rolled tanks on my civilization that I hadn't teched into military at all.
Swyphd in that stupid game.
The only way...
No.
That was... So now you have, like one failure in that game?
Oh,
you're only 9,999 away.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't think we're ever going to reach that.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
So that's... Okay,
but one thing I wanted to throw out.
Yes.
When you were describing space engineers and walking through your process of trial and error and building things, customizing things, doing the math, and then a couple of minutes later, it sounded like the same thing when you were describing your work on your YouTube channel. The levers were different. The systems are different because space engineers is spaceships and mining and stuff like that. And YouTube is a different kind of research and a different kind of math. But the process you used seemed very similar to me, where you tried things out, you looked at what other people were doing, you did a lot of research, trial and error, and I think that's really interesting because one thing I know that some YouTube creators who hit it big sometimes think like this is kind of random, I don't deserve this, or whatever, but you put in all that work and like you built the spaceship that flies. And it is true that somebody else could build a similar thing and it could not fly because they built it on the same day that Mr. Beast uploaded a video.
Yeah.
But that discounts that work that you put into it and that like analytical brain that I think is trained in part by video games, in part by the process of practicing space engineers and creating a challenge for yourself. I mean, that's what you did. You were like, I'm going to narrow down this group of videos that I'm going to model mine after. And I'm just going to look at that's kind of similar to being like, I'm not going to play with a spacesuit. So you like created, anyway, I just thought that was really interesting.
That is really the way, way you game is the way you dig around in the algorithm for YouTube. Like you're engineering your YouTube channel just like you do in space. You're surviving and crafting. You're treating YouTube like a survival crafting game.
You know what? I hadn't really thought about it that way, and I think maybe I would benefit mentally from thinking about it more that way. I have adapted, or I have adopted the idea that YouTube really is a game at the end of the day. It's hard to play a game when it's paying your bills, and so I think that there is a point in which it turns from no expectations and I'm just doing this for fun, and any success is like, oh, cool, it's a hit of dopamine, and you're just like, that's really nice and unexpected. And then it turns into something else entirely when now there is an expectation, because I've left other stuff behind, and I'm now relying on this to be a way to feed myself and my family. Where you lose that a little bit, and it can be a little bit harder to look at it that way of, this is a game. This is a game. There are stats. There's clearly a meta of how to get your channel, your character to a high level. But yeah, I think I lose sight of that sometimes.
Do you feel like this has changed the way you view video games in general, or can you still? Are there still compartments for video games are fun and video games are work, or has it changed your entire outlook on gaming?
No, I mean it has changed it a bit, because anytime I think there is a cautionary tale to say that anytime you want to take your the hobby that you have and turn it into the way that you make money, doing something for money just inherently changes the nature of it. You're no longer intrinsically motivated, and that kind of changes the flavor. But I would still say that being able to do something that you enjoy, and then that also be the way that you can pay your bills, is very good. But there is a balance there that you kind of have to understand. Do I still enjoy video games? Absolutely. I just recently bought a new game that I started playing. I was going to suggest to you guys tonight, which is it's called Risk of Rain 2. I don't know why I've never picked it up. It's been around for forever. It's overwhelmingly positive reviews. It's like a roguelike first-person shooter.
We like those.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
and so I was playing that the other day, just trying it out, and that's way fun. And so I still really like video games. I will say that something that has changed, I think, through this process, and I don't know if it's just because I played Space Engineers and Zomboid for so long, and now I think more in terms of scenarios, but I find myself dissecting game mechanics far more often than I used to. I think that was something I did more kind of subconsciously. But now when I play a game, I pay more attention to, I don't know. I'm thinking about like Enshrouded, like the window of time between when you would parry and like stun the enemy, and you could do like your power attack. I left in their feedback. I was like, the timing window between these two things really breaks the immersion in the gameplay. And I don't even know if they saw that feedback at any point, but I did see that they patched it out at some point later. Because awesome. It's just a bad, like, I want to say bad. That game is fantastic. But like that element of the game, it was just like these little one-off things. And so I find myself kind of seeing those a little bit more.
I do think you see those. I feel like whenever we game together, we talk near the beginning of the podcast, we talked about this concept of ludoliteracy, which is the fancy word for literacy in gaming, like a general sort of literacy in gaming, and how important that is. I think Swyphd actually just really hit on this idea that when you're really literate at a game, the theory is you start to be able to see everything you're doing as a game, and you can break things down into what the mechanics are. As soon as we start a new game, sometimes even your vocabulary about half of these things, as you're talking about how crafting and sorting and animation and all that stuff works together, you can see the skeleton. Like, you can see through all of this, all the exterior into the inner workings of the engineering of the game. I think that's I don't. Maybe it's a new superpower, as you say, but I feel like that aspect of that was certainly always there. That's really cool.
I mean, I definitely think it's just time playing games, and I also maybe the amount of times that I've crashed the different games I'm playing because of the mods and stuff, and so I go in and I try to mess with those and mess with settings and trying to make the game play the way I want it to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do find myself spending more time looking into those mechanics. I mean, here's the thing. I would, especially with this newfound appreciation for the game mechanics, I would love to get into game dev. it is such a multifaceted. What's that German word that you always use?
Gesamtkunstwerk.
Yeah. Right? It's music, it's artwork, it's animation, it's coding. It's there are so many different facets to making just even a simple game, and it seems so daunting to do it. But looking at these different games and looking at the mechanics that they do or that they have, it's just it scratches a part of my brain that I'm like, ooh, I want to scratch that more. How do I get into the back end of this?
Yes, once you start to see all how how it's all made, you want to, well, and it's the way you look at all this, right? I just feel like there's a pattern for you, like, of just sort of digging into the mechanics of all these different things and then trying not just to recognize the mechanics, but build with them. Maybe you did that with YouTube, right? You found all those different mechanics, started to build with those, and now next phase is actually build a game yourself, which you should do. I think you would do a great job.
Well, if I learn all the skills to do it, but
I volunteer to be a beta tester of your game.
Same.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. I will definitely keep that in mind. If you guys are not the people that I go to help me actually make it.
I don't want to hear about it until the beta is what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
I do. I'll crash whatever rovers need to be crashed.
Perfect.
I'm ready.
Perfect. I mean, that's what beta testers do.
Right.
You're supposed to crash stuff.
See? I want you to remember that
for.
next time.
E-Rock is a natural-born beta tester, is what he's saying.
Perfect.
Remember, he's waited his whole life for us.
But with the idea of the mechanics in the games, I think if I'm getting super nerdy and getting overly dissecting it, I think it would be. It's like the Venn diagram in my brain it's the psychology and gaming crossover. The thing that I think about when I think about like game mechanics, and I think about trying to create a scenario with whether it was Space Engineers or Project Zomboid or whatever other games, I think about the rule put in and how it affects the way in which the player will interact with the world. And so a good example of that would be Doom. The development of the most recent one that came out, it was like Doom. Doom
as in the video game.
Man, I forget the name of it. It was like Doom Eternal, I think.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had this thing that they were talking about during the development process, where they wanted to give the enemies grenades to throw to make the combat a little bit more engaging. And one thing that they noticed when they were taking it out to beta testers was that because the enemies were throwing grenades that would do splash damage, it was causing the player to hide more. And if you think about everything that the Doom guy represents, and his whole thing is, no, I'm not trapped in here with you. You're trapped in here with me, right? And like he's the guy that scares demons. And so because of the psychology of that game and that player experience and that character, they decided to throw out that mechanic. And I don't know this for certain, so you might have to fact check me on this part, but I think they actually took it out of the enemy and might have added a similar bonus to the character, because they don't want the player to be hiding.
Yeah.
That character does not hide.
No.
The enemies hide. And so they switched it up because like it affects the gameplay.
Wow.
And so when I look at changing up how the game works, that's kind of how I think about it, which is how will people interact with these different rule sets, and what will it kind of cause them to do, which I think game designers do. Just I think that's their job.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's just a really fascinating thing. And I majored in business because I thought that was the thing to do, but there was a very, very real possibility. I took a psychology class, and then the head of psychology for the school was the teacher of that class, and he talked to me and my brother, and he said, I don't know what you guys are doing in your other majors, but you should for sure be psychology majors. And I was thinking about it for a while, but I was worried about employment. But now I'm working on YouTube, so maybe I shouldn't have worried about that too much.
It's working out too, though. The YouTube part of it, I don't know, because of that understanding of psychology, obviously something is helping. There's part of the engineering of the whole algorithm is on our psychology, right? Like it's the idea that what keeps us there. I mean, YouTube, basically, the algorithm is designed for us to watch videos so that we watch ads. And the longer that we're there watching a single video, the more likely we're going to see the ads. Yeah. And so ultimately, for as much as there's a mystery to it, it's got to keep our interest. And that's a psychological thing that is enhanced by design and all these other things we just talked about. So, yeah. Absolutely. So I know that Swyphd seems to be struggling with his camera over there. He's all blurry, or maybe that's just how he looks today. I don't know. But,
well, I will say YouTube tip that I've learned is if you have a camera, you can change it so it doesn't use autofocus. So you can set it to where your face is, and then it won't, because it sometimes like checks and then gets it wrong and then focuses in a weird spot.
He's really struggling over there.
I quit.
Yeah,
I quit.
I think we finally got the audio right. So now it had to be like,
now it's time.
Speaking of failures,
it just went on the fritz, man.
So
let's try this. 16th time is the try. Is the try is the time. Is the successful
here you are.
Is the try.
Oh,
that's the quote.
Here's that
Abraham Lincoln.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Definitely Abraham Lincoln.
Totally.
So this is thank you for taking time out of your like engineering experiences,
zombie survival,
to come talk with us.
I may have misrepresented. I play video games like on a regular, like that's what I do. I wake up and I'm like, oh man, I gotta shoot some bugs, or I gotta shoot some zombies,
or
spread
democracy somehow.
How do I put this triangle on the side of this ship to make it look cooler? And should it be yellow or should it be orange?
But see, like one of the things we've talked about a ton on this podcast so far is willingness to fail, and like the ability of sticking with something when you fail, and the ability to get into flow, even knowing that you're going to fail a lot. And I think as I've been researching like entrepreneurship, for example, that's like the key of starting something, of starting anything, is, or another parallel is with writing, like writing a novel or something like that. All the people who write say, I am a bad writer. I write garbage, and then later on I write more garbage, and then I delete it all, and then I write more garbage, and then I go back and I edit and throw away most of what I've written, and then I've got something that's a little bit good that I then come back and look at 3 months later. But so like the whole entrepreneurship.
Sounds very familiar.
Entrepreneurship, you make something that is half baked, and you put it out there. That this is the whole theory of all software development right now, is create stuff, put it out there fast, fail quickly, learn from those mistakes and keep going. And that getting that practice of like crashing the rover or crashing the game or crashing the YouTube video.
Done all those things.
Failing, and like that's part of the point, and the fear of failure is is what's so hard to get over, especially when failure means, sorry, honey, we don't have, food this month.
Yeah.
But like, that's the difference. I think it's being willing to fail and being willing to try new things. And sometimes, you get 0 views on your podcast, and that's okay.
Well,
Yeah.
what I'm actually curious about, I was going to ask, I know we're just about out of time here, but I just want like maybe I don't know if this is a parting thought or something, and I don't want to, if Swyphd, if you had more questions, make sure we ask those too. What would you say are, it's kind of, I want to make a combo pack out of this question. I don't know how to do it. Like, what's the most important failure you feel like you faced, or what's the toughest challenge that you face as a streamer? I feel like maybe those are connected, or maybe they're not. And but yeah, what's the hardest thing? I think you look at it on the surface, right? It's, oh, you play video games for a living and you try to figure out how to fit the triangle and what color on the ship. Like, that must be easy, and you've had some success in all the ways you can have success in streaming games, both sort of financially, and you've at least once cracked a code that is working, and you've done it more than once as you maintain success. What's the hard part? What's the challenge?
I'd say for me, the hardest part is the change in mentality between when I went from no suit over to these longer form scripted videos, because the longer production time and the scripting and the time in between setting up videos, when you work from home and you play video games, it can be pretty easy to get into a mental place where you can start looking at your time like you're not using it effectively. Because, I mean, especially growing up, right? Video games were definitely not considered a productive use of time. And so when that's what you do for a living, and YouTube, it's not like I can go and talk to my grandpa about playing video games on YouTube. That is a totally foreign concept. So I hear all the time, like, hey, if you ever want a real job, this kind of stuff, and which is nobody, like, there's no fault there. It's not a very common thing, but growing up that way and feeling that way, and then not interacting with the audience, you can start attaching this idea of wasting time and the guesswork that goes into with whether something's going to be successful or not, and it can kind of eat away at that self-esteem. So I'd say that was the hard part for me, is understanding like what to do next, and being willing to, like, I lost that willingness to fail, and I started attaching emotions that were critiques of myself. Right? Like, I'm critiquing myself. Other people also critique me, but that's always going to happen on YouTube. But it's usually like, I didn't like this one thing, and that could be a very valid point, and that could be a way for me to grow. But the critiques I sometimes critique myself on, and I attach those to an audience, a faceless audience that I don't know. And then you just kind of have this invisible person that's sitting there telling you that you're, like, everything that you're doing is bad, and you're wasting your time. That can be pretty difficult on the mental. And so that's something that I'm trying to get better at, is making that inner critic be quiet, and let me be willing to just be me and fail like I did at the beginning. And then I think the biggest failure that I learned from was not putting videos out. I'm coming back after not having posted in like 8 months, and I'm kind of trying to work my way back into a more comfortable position, but nothing can happen if you don't do anything. Seems pretty simple, but
man, yes,
but very insightful.
And so I sit there and I worry, and I try to solve problems that haven't even presented themselves, and I get in my own way. And so even for the 8 months that I was gone, and I don't think I haven't said this on my channel, but for the 8 months that I hadn't posted any videos, I have hundreds of hours of footage of games that I've tried to record and make episodes of or do something of, that I just kind of have stored on my hard drive, that I never published. And I think that was the failure. Is I started these projects and I got in my own head and I stopped myself from putting them out there. And now, being on kind of the upswing from that, I realize that no matter what happens, even if I don't like it, it's every artwork has an ugly phase, and you will figure it out as you go. But you can't do that if you don't get going. I think there was I heard this quote that was just simply put, don't wait until you're good at something to start doing it. Start doing it, and then you will get good at it.
You know that everything you just said like moves me to my core, and thank you for being vulnerable about all of that. Like the idea that the true failure is the failure that you've projected on yourself that won't even allow you to create. And in our discussions, how you've talked about how that never felt as acute as when the stakes felt high. Like somehow being successful, especially with that one video that went so viral, made all the stakes for all the future videos feel so high. Like I've got to recreate that, and all of a sudden it cut you off at the knees and you couldn't create anymore. And as you tried, but you couldn't. That moves me so much. And actually, we're still starting out on this little venture of ours that is this Pixel Professor podcast. I'm like you, and I do the same thing. Like I feel like I have to read every book about a thing before I can release it. I have to understand every insight, because somebody's gonna find the thing that's in my blind spot that I'm not even putting out there, and they're gonna attack it. And it was Swyphd. I don't think I've given him credit enough on this podcast yet, because we haven't said this out loud yet. We just talked about it behind the scenes, because we had a few episodes ready to go, and I was ready to not release them. I was ready to just be like, no, there's too many things I feel like I don't understand. I can't put this. We don't even have an audience yet. There are no stakes, right? But that being said, it was Swyphd who said, and I won't use the same language, but like the idea is you have to create a crappy product that people love. And in the beginning, you can do that, right? And your product was not crappy, but it was still just. If
you go back and watch the very first Space Engineers episode I put out, it was crappy, and I watch it and I cringe. But I also watch it and I'm like, man, like, yeah, it's not good, but it's so refreshing that it's like more authentic than kind of some of the stuff I've done recently. And so it was bad. It was bad. I think I reused the same song like 4 times, but anyway,
your music was you're exactly right. Like you had a community that you formed, and the idea is create a crappy product and then build it, and then you have to just create. I'm saying this wrong already, but create that crappy product and then build a community of people who love it. And again, I didn't feel like it was crappy. From my perspective, I couldn't see the blind spots. I just enjoyed being a part of that community and watching you grow. And so I think the message has to be, when your audience grows, the stakes grow. And maybe I love that idea that every artist has their ugly phase. And often I think a lot of artists are doing their best work during their ugly phase, and they only recognize it after, right? Because this maybe the building blocks in that phase were what made the rest of their pieces later great. But you do have a community who loves you, and who loved you from the time that you were creating the crappy product, right? And then who continues to love you, and I'm sure they want to hear from you. Anyway, it's been great to sort of hear from you, speaking as a member of that community who loves you and your work. What a cool place the way your mind works and how you design and create is just awesome, and I'm glad you do it, and you should keep doing it.
Well, thank you. Well, we got to get back into it, because I got to say, I get so many comments on videos that are like, is Skyjax coming back?
Skyjax. That was a lot of fun. I feel like my smile muscles and my laughing muscles, I don't think I've ever laughed as hard as when we played Skyjacks.
I know.
It
It was honestly, that was an oversight in the creation of the scenario. I didn't realize that the planet would not allow for the type of gameplay that we had created.
The failure aspect of that, like nothing worked ever.
It was
wonderful.
awesome.
Like I don't think any of the projects we started ever like found, whether it was building a train or even just like
We got that train working. We got that train working.
Yeah, we did.
The day before we realized that the mod we were using was like crashing the game constantly.
Yeah.
So we got it working and then we deleted all of it.
Well, yeah, but not before you ran it off the rails multiple times.
At least once. Multiple times. Multiple times.
We built a rover that was specifically designed to recover the train car after somebody derailed it.
It's true.
Somebody.
Anybody.
Whoever that
It could have been anybody.
It could have been anybody. It could have been anybody.
I'm sorry. Speaking as one who so rarely derailed, anyway, the rover joke's never going to get old. It really is not. So.
The train joke.
Yeah. Oh, the train joke.
Train-tastic.
Fantastic.
Oh, I forgot about that.
So, speaking for all of YouTube, we appreciate your videos. Keep them coming.
Yes.
And
Sounds
we're
good.
excited to see the next one. And we want to have you on again.
Yes.
So be thinking about what other details about your life, what other things you can share that will help other people, but also kind of make you share a lot on YouTube.
Well, and we love audience members too. Like if you've ever wanted the opportunity to speak to a successful streamer, like what kind of things would you want to ask?
Moderately
MadMavn?
successful. I do not have millions of subscribers.
But you've definitely cracked into what's got to be a small percentage of people in terms of. I love what you said in a video you made recently where you talked about winning the YouTube lottery, which you certainly did. And I also want to echo what Swyphd said. It wasn't just luck. You did a lot of work to crack that code. But that being said, I think a lot of people would love to know more about you and how you did it. So I'd love to hear from audience members in terms of what they'd like to hear from.
Yeah,
what they'd like to hear from you.
I'd love to come back.
Yeah,
it's like winning the NBA draft lottery. Like you're running an NBA basketball franchise. Like you can't just like walk in off the street and be like, I'm going to buy a ticket for the NBA lottery.
Yes,
you have can't just like. There is an aspect of lottery to it.
Yeah.
There's also an aspect of you run an NBA team every day for 365 days.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, I
that's
appreciate
my little soapbox about lotteries. So on that note,
do the things.
Please like and subscribe,
Yes.
share, comment. If you want to ask MadMavn a probing question about which mods he uses
and why he uses
in
them,
games
and why he hates the
or
games
in
that
life.
he plays. Yeah, and has
and
to mod
why
them.
he hates the game. Yeah.
Just as a general rule, everybody who's listening, the mod list is in the description. If you look in the description, the mod list is there.
It's very long.
I don't know why nobody asks me.
Yeah.
And also, in the 100 Days videos, they are NPCs.
just trust him. They really are. They really are. So
Well, I vote we play some video games.
I'd vote that same
I
thing.
am so on board. Have you heard of this game, Mystic of Rain?
No.
We should talk
never
about
heard
it.
of it.
We'll play
Nobody's
it tonight.
ever-
We'll have to come back on and tell everybody how it goes.
The key to signing off on this is you don't have to click the red leave button at the end. Just so you know, there is no experience behind this, but nobody's done this before. But when we stop
who does
recording,
that?
you don't have to
I
press
can just
leave.
push stop.
Where
So subscribe to MadMavn's channel too. And we will talk to you later, guys. Bye, everybody.